The moon was barely a sliver in the sky when I first heard the whisper, faint but unmistakable. I had just finished my work in the workshop, putting the final touches on an invention I was certain would revolutionize warfare. The sound came from the shadowed corners of the room, from the edge of the candlelight where the parchment sat undisturbed. I knew without a doubt that it was no coincidence. This wasn't the usual night visit from a student, nor the quiet hum of my tools, nor the murmur of distant conversation. It was something darker. Leonardo, the voice croaked softly, too soft for a man's voice. It was a whisper that slid into my mind like a serpent, curling around the edges of my thoughts. I turned sharply, eyes scanning the room, but there was no one, only the quiet rustle of my papers and the distant sounds of the city at night. "Who's there?" I demanded, straining my ears. I reached for the dagger tucked beneath my cloak, but the room remained empty. The voice persisted, now closer, almost at my ear. "You've been chosen." I froze. The words hit me like a cold stone dropped into the heart. Chosen? Not many men in my position could claim to be chosen, not for something of importance, not for something beyond the walls of this workshop, not for something like this. A figure stepped from the shadows, his face hidden beneath the hood of a dark cloak. He moved with such purpose, as though the night itself bent to his will. He did not speak further until he had crossed the room, stopping just out of arm's reach. "Master da Vinci," he said, bowing deeply, "I come with a message, and a mission that will require your talents in ways few understand." I regarded the man carefully. His voice was familiar, but his presence, the energy he emanated, was unnerving. There was something about him, something that told me this was no ordinary messenger. This was someone sent from the deepest corners of power. "I don't often welcome guests at this hour," I said, my voice cool, even as the first seeds of curiosity and suspicion began to root themselves in my mind. "But you will find that I do not entertain mysteries." The man's eyes gleamed beneath his hood. "Then perhaps you will entertain this one. The Pope is in danger, and you, Leonardo da Vinci, are the only one who can prevent a disaster." I felt a strange chill. It wasn't from the cold of the room, but from the words themselves. The Pope, Pope Julius II, the man who had commissioned many of my works, the man whose immense power shaped much of Italy's future, but a threat against him? In all my years in Florence and Milan, I had heard whispers of danger, but nothing like this. "Explain yourself," I said, my hand tightening around the handle of my dagger, but the man did not flinch. Instead, he reached into his cloak and pulled out a small leather pouch, untying it carefully. "I am from a secret order," he continued, his voice unwavering. "We've kept the Vatican safe for centuries, but there is a conspiracy, one that goes deeper than any mere political threat. It is an ancient plot, centuries old, and it is unfolding as we speak." The pouch hit the table with a soft thud. Inside I saw a small bundle wrapped in faded cloth. I unwrapped it cautiously, revealing a set of maps, each one drawn with a precision that could only be described as divine. They were no ordinary maps, however. These were maps to hidden places, places buried beneath the Vatican itself. "There is a weapon," the man continued, "a weapon buried under the Holy See, one that, if released, will bring the downfall of the Church and the Pope. A device older than any of us, a device that even the Church has kept secret." I stared at the maps, feeling the weight of history pressing down on me. I had often toyed with the idea that beneath the Vatican's grand halls and marble floors, something older and more dangerous might lie in wait. But these maps, they were no fantasy. They were real, drawn by someone who had once walked these halls, someone who knew their secrets intimately. Why me? I asked, my mind already racing through the possibilities. I'm no soldier, nor a priest. What can an artist like me do against such a plot? The man's lips curled into a tight, knowing smile. Because, Master Leonardo, your mind is the greatest weapon we have. You see the world differently than most. Where others see art, you see science. Where they see beauty, you see structure. Where they see a painting, you see a plan. He stepped forward and placed a hand on my shoulder. I've seen your work, your designs for war machines, your brilliant inventions. You are the key to unlocking this mystery and stopping the disaster that is to come. But you must act quickly. The conspiracy has already begun, and the clock is ticking. I stood motionless for a moment, the weight of his words settling upon me like a dark cloud. The Pope, the Vatican, all of it was under threat. And somehow, in this strange turn of fate, it had fallen to me, Leonardo da Vinci, to save them. I looked at the maps once more, my fingers tracing the intricate lines and symbols. This was no ordinary task, and this was no ordinary plot. The stakes had never been higher. The question now was simple. Could I, a man of art and invention, save the Vatican from destruction? And so, in the dead of night, I began to plan, not just for the art of it, but for the science, for the mechanics, for the strategy. My mind whirred with possibilities, with solutions, with designs. In that moment, I realized that the fate of the church might well depend on what I could build with my hands, with my intellect. The next few days would be the most dangerous and most important of my life. The first step was clear. I needed to gather information. The maps I had been given were a key, but they were incomplete. They showed hidden tunnels beneath the Vatican, secret passageways that wound through the foundations of the church, but there was no indication of what they contained or what they led to. The only way to understand the full scope of this threat was to see it for myself. I had always been curious about the catacombs beneath St. Peter's Basilica. There had been rumors over the years, whispers of ancient relics, of secret chambers built during the early days of the church. Some said that the tomb of St. Peter himself lay buried somewhere deep within the Vatican's walls. But such secrets were not for ordinary eyes, and I was not an ordinary man. It seemed now that I had been chosen for a purpose far greater than I ever imagined. I made my way to the Vatican at dusk, under the guise of a simple artist preparing for a commission. The guards at the gates had seen me before, of course. They knew me as the painter of the Last Supper and the creator of various devices for the Pope's military needs. They had no reason to suspect me of anything untoward, but tonight I wasn't there to paint. I was there to uncover a secret. As I approached the grand doors of St. Peter's, I felt a strange sense of reverence mixed with unease. This was the heart of the Christian world, a place that had stood for centuries, a symbol of divine authority and power. The idea that something dark, something dangerous, could be buried beneath its hallowed ground was almost sacrilegious. But the maps didn't lie. The shadows beneath the Vatican were real, and they held a threat far beyond any theological discourse. I slipped inside a small side entrance, one that I had used during my previous visits for personal projects. The dimly lit hallways echoed with the sound of my footsteps, and the air was heavy with the scent of centuries-old stone. I made my way down the narrow corridors, guided by the maps that now burned in my mind. The layout was complex, a maze of twisting stairways and dead ends. But I had a particular talent for navigating such spaces. I had spent years designing secret chambers and hidden mechanisms, so I was no stranger to the idea of things being concealed from the eye. After what seemed like an eternity, I arrived at a heavy stone door, hidden behind a tapestry of an angel. My heart quickened as I approached. This was it. This was the entrance that the maps had led to, the threshold of the unknown. The door was sealed with a lock unlike any I had ever seen. It was mechanical, not unlike the locks I had designed for my war machines, but this one was more intricate, more delicate. It was as though the lock had been crafted by a master who had wanted to ensure that no one would ever breach it. I ran my fingers over the surface, feeling the grooves and mechanisms. It was a puzzle, a challenge, and I, of course, loved a challenge. I reached into my satchel and pulled out a small set of tools, fine-tipped screwdrivers, tweezers, and a delicate hammer. I had designed them myself, specifically for situations like this. It took a few moments of quiet precision, but eventually the lock clicked open. The door creaked as it swung inward, revealing a narrow, dimly lit staircase leading down into the depths of the earth. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath shallow in the cool air. The walls of the tunnel were made of ancient stone, worn smooth by time and the passage of countless years. I descended, the only sound the soft shuffle of my feet on the cold stone steps. At the bottom, I found myself in a vast, open chamber, unlike anything I had imagined. The room was massive, its ceiling high above me, supported by pillars of marble. But it wasn't the size of the room that captured my attention. It was the symbols etched into the stone walls. Ancient symbols, ones I had never seen before. They were like a code, a language hidden in plain sight. I approached the walls cautiously, running my fingers over the strange markings. The symbols seemed to shift as I touched them, like they were alive, reacting to my presence. My mind raced. What had the Vatican been hiding all these years? What was the true purpose of this secret chamber? In the center of the room stood a large stone pedestal, and on it rested an object that sent a chill down my spine. It was a device, one unlike any I had ever seen. It looked like a cross between a clock and a mechanical device, but there was something otherworldly about it, something ancient. As I stepped closer to the pedestal, a low hum filled the air. The device began to glow, faintly at first, but then brighter and brighter, until the entire chamber was bathed in a strange, eerie light. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. But before I could touch the device, a sudden noise startled me. A distant shout echoed through the halls. Someone was coming. I quickly hid behind one of the stone pillars, my heart racing in my chest. The light from the device flickered, casting strange shadows across the room. I held my breath, praying that I wouldn't be discovered. Two figures appeared at the far end of the chamber, their silhouettes dark against the glowing light. I couldn't make out their faces, but I could see their movements, methodical, deliberate. They knew this place well. The first figure spoke, his voice low and urgent. "Is it ready?" "It will be," the second figure replied. "The device will activate soon. Once it does, there will be no stopping it." I strained to hear, my mind racing. What device? What were they talking about? "We need to move quickly," the first figure continued. "The Pope's life depends on it." I felt the blood drain from my face. The device. It wasn't just a weapon. It was something far more dangerous, something that could change the course of history. I waited for a moment, watching as the figures moved toward the pedestal. The tension in the room was unbearable, the weight of the conspiracy pressing down on me. I couldn't let them activate whatever this was. I had to stop them. But how? Suddenly, I remembered the map. There was a note scrawled in the corner, something I hadn't paid attention to at first. Only the hand of a true inventor can control the device. Only one who understands the workings of both art and science. I wasn't just the artist, the painter, the inventor. I was the key. And if I could unlock the secrets of this device, perhaps I could save the Pope and all of Rome. I stepped forward, my mind racing with possibilities. I had no time to lose. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stepped forward from the shadows. The two figures were now standing near the pedestal, their backs to me. The hum of the device filled the room, a low vibration that seemed to resonate in my very bones. I could feel its power, its danger seeping into the air like a silent predator. I had no time to waste. I needed to act before they realized I was there. I moved quickly, my mind racing through all the mechanical designs I had ever created. This was no ordinary invention. It was something far beyond anything I had seen or conceived of. And yet there was something familiar about it, something that spoke to me on a deeper level. I could sense the underlying logic, the mechanisms hidden within its intricate frame. It was as if the device itself was calling out to me, waiting for someone with the knowledge to unlock its potential. I crept closer, moving with the stealth I had honed over the years in the quiet corners of Florence. The figures were still engrossed in their conversation, unaware of my presence. I dared not speak. I could not afford to make a sound. Every instinct in my body told me that the slightest noise could alert them, and then everything would be lost. The device on the pedestal pulsed with light, casting an eerie glow across the room. Its intricate gears and cogs were visible through the delicate glass casing. I studied it carefully, my mind calculating the necessary steps. I had designed machines before, but this was something else entirely. The patterns, the logic, the way the parts interacted, it was almost as if the device had been made for me, for my mind. It was as though someone had anticipated my arrival. The first figure, still with his back turned to me, spoke again. "It won't be long now. The Pope's time is running out." The urgency in his voice snapped me back to reality. I couldn't afford to hesitate. I had to act now. I moved to the pedestal with deliberate precision, my fingers dancing over the device's surface, carefully assessing each component. My hand brushed against the glass, and for a moment, nothing happened. The device remained still, as if it were waiting for me to make the next move. I could hear the steady breathing of the two men behind me, unaware that I was inches away from stopping their plan. With a deep breath, I began to turn the central dial of the device, the smooth metal cold beneath my fingertips. It clicked into place with a soft, almost imperceptible sound. For a moment, there was nothing, no explosion, no sudden shift. Then a low rumble vibrated through the room, the air itself seeming to tremble. The light from the device grew brighter, and the hum intensified. The walls began to shake as if the room itself were alive, responding to my touch. The second figure turned abruptly, his eyes widening in shock. "What have you done?" Before I could respond, the first figure whipped around, his hand moving toward a concealed dagger at his belt. He was fast, but I was faster. Years of practice with a blade had taught me to read movements before they happened. I seized the moment, stepping aside just as he lunged at me. The room was chaos. The figures stumbled, their focus entirely on the unexpected turn of events. But I didn't have time to engage with them. The device was now reacting to my actions, and I had no idea what it might do next. "Stop it!" the second figure shouted. "You don't know what you're doing." I ignored him, my gaze fixed on the device. My hands moved with practiced ease, manipulating the controls as I sought to understand its purpose. Slowly, the gears shifted, and the hum began to change in pitch. A faint, almost imperceptible sound, like the ticking of a clock, echoed through the chamber. It was then that I realized this device wasn't merely a weapon. It was a key that could unlock something far older than I had imagined, something buried beneath the Vatican, hidden for centuries. The true nature of the conspiracy began to reveal itself in fragments, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. One of the figures moved toward me, his face twisted with fury. "You fool!" he snarled. "You have no idea what you've just awakened." I met his gaze, my mind still racing with the implications of what I had uncovered. I had no intention of stopping now. I had come too far. I turned the final dial. The device sprang to life. A burst of light shot up from the pedestal, casting long, jagged shadows across the room. The floor beneath me trembled, and the walls seemed to ripple with an energy I could not explain. The two figures staggered back, their faces drained of color. "Impossible!" the first figure whispered, his voice barely audible above the growing roar of the device. "It should never have been triggered." The room felt as though it were closing in around us, the air thick with tension and power. I could hear the faint sound of distant voices, as if the very walls were speaking. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the light faded, and the hum of the device died away. The chamber fell silent, the only sound the steady beating of my heart in my chest. I stood, breathless, my mind still processing what had just transpired. The figures, now on their knees, stared at the device in disbelief. Whatever I had just activated, whatever had been hidden beneath the Vatican, was now beyond their control. The first figure struggled to speak, his voice filled with fear. "You don't understand. The device was meant to open the way to the true power beneath the Vatican. The weapon, the power that could bring the world to its knees." I glanced at the device, now still, its glowing light dimming. It was clear that the object I had just activated was far more than a weapon. It was a key, one that could change everything. But what had I unleashed? What was the true nature of the power that lay beneath the Vatican? And more importantly, how could I stop it from falling into the wrong hands? The answers were still out of reach. But I knew one thing for certain: the Pope's life was still in danger. The conspiracy wasn't over yet, and I, Leonardo da Vinci, would have to continue my dangerous work, using my mind, my inventions, and whatever resources I could gather to unravel the mystery before it was too late. As I turned to leave the chamber, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had only scratched the surface of a much larger story, one that would take everything I had, everything I could invent and create, to stop. The echo of my footsteps filled the chamber as I stepped back from the now still device. The two figures, still kneeling on the cold stone floor, looked as though they had seen the very face of a forgotten god. I couldn't help but feel a moment of pity. They had spent their lives guarding a secret, a weapon they believed would reshape the world, and now it had been unlocked by a simple twist of my hands. But pity had no place in this moment. The conspiracy was still in motion. The Vatican, the Pope, all of Rome, everything was still at risk. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. "What is this device? What is it truly capable of?" The first figure, the one who had spoken with such urgency, lifted his head slowly, his face pale and drawn. You have no idea what you've done," he whispered. "It is not just a device. It is a key to a power that was never meant to be awakened." His words hung in the air, heavy with dread. The other figure, his companion, remained silent, his gaze fixed on the device as though it might somehow spring to life again. I took a step toward them, my mind racing. "What power?" I demanded. "What is it that you've been guarding for all these years?" The first figure stood slowly, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. "The device opens the way to an ancient vault buried deep beneath the Vatican, a vault that contains knowledge and power older than the Church itself. The Vatican's founders, those who built this place, knew that such power could never fall into the wrong hands. They created the vault and hid it away, sealed it off from the world, and from the very men who might misuse it." I felt a shiver run through me. Ancient power, secrets hidden beneath the Vatican. It was hard to comprehend, yet it made sense. I had spent my life studying the anatomy of the human body, the mechanics of flight, the very fabric of the universe itself. But this was different. This was beyond science. It was something almost mythical. "Then what is it you wanted with this vault?" I asked. "Why now? Why the Pope?" The figure hesitated, as though weighing whether to speak further. Then, with a sigh, he answered, "Because the Pope is the key. The Church has always been the protector of this secret. But the Pope, now, he is not what you think. He is a puppet, a figurehead. The true power lies with the ones who control him, the ones who control the vault. The device you've just activated is the signal that the time has come. They'll use the Pope to open the vault. And once the vault is opened, they'll have access to everything." "Everything?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "Everything," he repeated gravely. "The wealth, the knowledge, the weapons, all of it. And with that power, they will reshape the world in their image." It was a revelation that shook me to my core. I had been a part of this conspiracy all along without even realizing it. My inventions, my work for the Pope, had I unknowingly been contributing to their plans? But the man's words were clear. If I didn't act now, the Vatican would fall. The Pope would fall. And with him, the entire foundation of Christendom itself. I turned toward the device once more, its surface now cold and lifeless. Then what now? What must I do to stop them? The first figure stepped closer, his expression somber. "The device has done its job. It has opened the way. But you, Leonardo, you are the only one who can close it. You are the one who understands the mechanics, the way these things work. You have the knowledge and the intellect to stop this. If you don't, the Pope will lead the world into darkness. You must act before they get to him." I felt a deep sense of urgency settle within me. There was no turning back now. I had come here as a man of art, a man of invention, never suspecting that my creations would become a key to a conspiracy that spanned centuries. But now I understood. The Vatican's secrets, the power it held, all of it was within my grasp. But it would take everything I had to stop the plans already set in motion. I glanced over at the figures, their faces drawn with fear and desperation. They were no longer my concern. The only thing that mattered was the Pope and the ancient vault beneath the Vatican. If I couldn't stop the forces behind this plot, the world would never be the same. "We need to move quickly," I said, my voice firm with resolve. "Tell me what I need to do." The first figure nodded, his face grim. "Follow the maps. There are two entrances to the vault. One is through the catacombs and the other is hidden beneath the chapel of Saint Peter. The path you must take is dangerous. There are traps, old mechanisms designed to protect the secrets buried within. But you must reach the vault before they do." I nodded, already formulating a plan in my mind. I could use my knowledge of engineering and mechanics to bypass the traps and gain access to the vault. The problem was, I had no idea who they were, the people behind this conspiracy, the ones who sought to use the Pope as their puppet. But I knew one thing for certain. Time was running out. "I'll go through the chapel," I said. "It's the most direct route." The figure nodded. "Be careful. The vault's guardian is no ordinary man. He's been waiting for centuries. If you fail, everything will be lost." I didn't respond, for there were no words that could prepare me for the task ahead. The weight of history was upon me. I was not just an artist anymore. I was something more. A key, a protector, a savior of a world that had long forgotten the dangers lurking in the shadows.